Today we're doing one more records thing. It's very similar to the past few, so if you're bored of this, that's great. Good for you. I wanted to do one excluding all tournament winners, answer the most important question possible: who is the greatest player to never win, and why is it Chickeny followed by Piggyman? Let's find out together. For most total wins, we have Chickeny in first. We have Metis in second. Metis has a claim for greatest player to never win. He has made, as we will see shortly, the most finals of anyone who's never won. I've been so impressed by Yevon recently. Uh, Foyer really would win about half his games, lose about half his games, but it didn't seem to matter who he played. Like he beat some top players, he lost to some weaker players. A really curious player, Grat, Jadat had really strong runs around 06, 07. We have Piggyman, Kazakh, Mafijosi, the Patriot, Amo. Really, both really good, kind of 2011 to 13ish. Ray Emanator also very strong in that time period. You know, if you divided these up into time periods, you'd have Grat, Jadat, Kazakh all peaking around 2007. Mafi Josie, Dream Virus, maybe Gambit as well, peaking like 2004 5. And then you have kind of 2011 to 13. That's really when Metis jumps out. That's when Piggyman is peaking. Maybe he's a touch earlier than that. That's when the Patriot and Amo are peaking and Raminator is peaking. And then you have Vialva and Chickeny starting to do better, somewhat overlapping with 2011-13, but also 2014 onwards. So you have this whole range of people from all eras here represented, which is nice to see. All right, we got most finals. Metis is the leader, followed by Chickeny. Jaws is going to very much impress you here if he hasn't already. Also Ulti. And here's all the other players to not win. Who have we not mentioned so far? Aurora, Blizzard. Blizzard has the finals in Rhinoa, but he also put up a performance in Squall, I think, right next to it that was fantastic. Really strong showings that year. That's, I guess, 2010. Coops, Gafgarian, we'll talk more about him later. Roseman, Slawio, Soap, Spitfire, they will all show up very similar. They all basically have the same resume. Slawio, Soap, Spitfire basically all played 3 tournaments, made the finals of 1, no runs in the others. Waltz, Vialva we've seen, Yevon we've seen, Zoom here as well is nice to see. Okay, most semifinals. Chickeny now claims the lead over Metis. Metis, this means, has a very good record in the semifinals. 4 out of 5 is pretty strong. What names have we maybe not seen so much? Cliffy has played very few tournaments and has made 2 semifinals. So Cliffy may be honing in on stuff, and that would be cool to see. Also DJ, another player we haven't talked about yet, has a really nice run, sort of at the end of the site, which makes it easier in some ways to achieve icons, but also his actual runs are really good and just really consistently good. Who else we got? Spike Spiegel, we haven't mentioned yet, one of the great early players. And I think that's it for players we haven't mentioned. Just trying to shout out everyone who comes up. There are lots of really good non-winners who don't make this list. I did check a lot of them that never found a place to insert anywhere. And you'll see a lot of the same names, but everyone who shows up, I'll try to at least mention. Most quarterfinals, Chickeny starts to extend his lead. Metis and Piggyman looking like the top competitors. But great to see Doomtrain here. Foyer was very much a long-term 50% player, but a long-term 50% player is going to make a bunch of icons, and doing it in an era with longer tournaments is really nice. Of course, Mafi Josie and Ray Emanator really racked up a bunch of icons towards the end of his playing. Cool Spot. We haven't seen Cool Spot yet. I'm not sure we've mentioned the Patriot yet. I think we must have. All these look like familiar names. Oh, Borchardt. Yeah, Borchardt has some nice runs. All right, finals rate. So this is going to favor shorter term players. And what I did was I asterisked all the players who have played like at least 7 tournaments kind of thing, which is basically just Jaws, Metis, and Chickeny. And I think this shows something, which is now obviously it's very hard to make the finals. So if you only get like 3 shots at the finals and you make it in one of them, as Biddy, Slawio, Soap, Spitfire, and XCV did, oh my god, right? 1 out of 3 making the finals is a fantastic rate. But it is also to say, if you look at this list, I'm sure, and you look at the players here, if you, and a lot of these are early players, but if you overlap with the kind of players that show up on this list, some you'll think they're really good, maybe they could have kept it up, and some you'll think there's no way they would have kept this up. And I think that's basically just what's going to happen with small samples, but it's really easy to romanticize it. If we think one of the players was good and they performed well in their small sample, instead of going, well, regression to the mean, they're probably good, but not as good as this looks, we'll go, I believe that one. And for the player we don't aren't as impressed by, we'll go, that's a small sample. And instead, we should just go like, this is small samples for all of them. And there are still some really cool achievements there. That Ulti made 2 finals and 4 tournaments is nuts. In fact, I should have put an asterisk with Ulti. Asterisks meaning, actually, I put asterisks here for multiple finals, not larger samples. And Ulti does have multiple finals, so Ulti's number is really notable here. But it also to say Jaws, Midas, and Chickeny have been very, very good at making the finals and tournaments they've played, and their 11 to 15% range, I think, is much more impressive than that 33 to 50% range. And I think this is just visible from a lot more players have a 20 or 30% rate at something that are small sample players that happen to spike it than have sustained over a long time and maintained achieved multiple finals. But that's just, you know, my opinion on small samples. All right, semifinals rate. We have Ace here. Ace played 2 tournaments, made the semifinals of one. One of the reasons I'm more impressed by that than I normally would be was it was in a 7-rounder, and he also went 2-1 in his other tournament. And as we've talked about in previous videos, making round 3 regularly is really hard. That's one of the kind of more impressive things to happen. Consistently making round 3s is something, if you look at the lists and you compare it to like icon lists and stuff like that, round 3 is a very notable achievement, and Ace achieved it in both of his tournaments. We also see Ulti again here. Cliffy, again, really promising new player. Very good quick feel for the game. Um, C17 and Sphere are fun to see. All right. Icon rate. Bryce 100%. Played 2 tournaments, got 2 icons. Impressively, went 4-1 in both tournaments. So even if they'd been 7-rounders, and I think one was a 7-rounder and one was a 6-rounder, would have made icons both times. Of course, 4-1 in a 5-round tournament is finals. Now, it's not quite the same. We've talked a lot about this. Earlier era, I think, has a more diluted player pool where you are much more likely to face someone who is very, very weak. But at the same time, there are more rounds, and that's going to knock out the weaker players, and you're going to have to survive more rounds. So there's arguments on both sides there. A really high rate for Chickeny here, given that everyone above him was a very short term player, or in the case of Stuff, is a very short term player. But you could also argue Stuff is one of the longest term players. Depends how you look at it. Also, nice job showing up here by Stuff. But yeah, Chickeny with a really nice showing. Also, Cliffy again impresses, and we see Jaws and Piggy Man looking really strong. You'll notice we've been seeing more of Piggy Man than we have of Midas in general, and I think that will just be the case. Some of that is that Midas played more in periods where he wasn't that strong, but some of this, as we'll see, is just that Piggy Man's just been really strong for a really long time, hasn't played that many tournaments, but in some sense is the, despite not actually playing that much, the fact that he popped in and would play a few tournaments over a bunch of different years and consistently perform well. Piggy Man is the Seto of non-winners, which is a funny analogy given that Piggy Man's, I believe he would say, his worst matchup, his most scary opponent to see, I guess after Great Sephiroth, I think he would say Seto. But Piggy Man, like Seto, will often play a couple tournaments, will come into one, will not play the next few, will come into another, and will just consistently be really, really good. Chickeny is maybe the Yojimbo. Really high peak at a really similar time. This is the easiest analogy to make because they're both Czech. They played each other a lot, but they peaked at similar times. Chickeny came around a little later, but Yojimbo's peak is later than people think. He wasn't as dominant in 2009, 10, 11. So they end up peaking at similar times. and just racks up more results than anyone had ever earned at that time, and also does it against really, really strong opposition, really highly rated opposition. Uh, if we're analogizing to winners, and I know the whole point of this video is to get away from winners, I would say Chickeny is Yojimbo, Piggyman is Seto, and Metis ends up getting the most finals, has a lower win rate. It's not Delial because Delial leads in a lot more categories. Maybe he's the Turds? I'm not sure. We'll leave that on the back burner. Anyhow, Takumi shows up here. I think that's a name we haven't said. Nimloth shows up here. Falcon X. We're seeing a lot of fun early names. You'll notice, though, a lot of the names popping up here are much, much older names. And from that, you could conclude a few things. One, you could conclude that the older field was really strong, but a lot of the strong players only played occasionally. And so you had this really, really strong batch of players that a lot of them would look like all time greats if they just played a bit more. But I think what it really means is something more like not that those players aren't good, but that in the next era, the really good players are playing consistently, and that makes the fields much tougher. That means there are 10 plus elite players in every field compared to fields where there are like 3 elite players that are playing regularly: Cookie, Kamikaze, Sujiro, and then a couple elite players, maybe elite players, that are going in and out. And that ends up making them, I think, easier fields, which in turn makes it easier to spike a few results, which in turn means more people show up as looking like they're spiking a lot of results. That I think some of them could have kept up a really high rate long term, probably lower than what they got in the small sample, but still a very high rate, and a bunch of them wouldn't have. And I think if you look at this list and look at these people, you will agree, if you were around at the era as they were, some of these players would have held up, some would not have. These numbers are just not the most reliable, and the people we should be most impressed by are Chickeny Jaws and Piggy Man, and Bryce's 2 for 2 is really cool as well. But okay, I'll try to say enough about small samples. Win rate. We have Lionheart in first. Didn't play very many tournaments. Obviously, Lionheart is considered one of the all-time legends of the game. I guess we'll probably never get to see that fully tested in tournaments. But what we have from tournament evidence certainly does not deny this, right? It's not enough to confirm it, but it certainly can't be evidence against. We see some cool older players here: Soap, C17, Ace. Ace, another player with a lot of legends around them. I think deservedly so. Nice to see Black Bolt here as well as Pogi, who had a fun run when I was starting out, making it to the finals of Rhinoa 4, I want to say. Okay, a win rate if we cut down to just 20 plus games played. Not even requiring that big a sample, and you'll notice like all those players disappeared because our samples on them are really, really small. Okay, sorry, I just keep hammering that point. Kefka, really good early player. I'm always really impressed when I look at Kefka's numbers. I think you look at his brackets, maybe they're not quite as tough as some players that came later, but there is no denying his win rate, his ability to make the finals and the semis. Then we have Homer. Homer's great. I wish Homer had played a bit more. He kind of peaks in mid 2008 and then goes mostly pretty inactive. And I remember playing some practice games with him later, and it was clear at that point he wasn't going to hold up against the top players. But he was also quite out of form. Brittany, surprisingly good showing here. Really strong performance whenever Brittany played tournaments. And we see usual suspects. Mafi Josie is obviously one of the top non-winners. I think at this point doesn't have a case for the best non-winner, but any conversation around the top, however many non-winners, basically includes Mafi Josie. You'll notice Metis doesn't appear here. Metis's win rate is 55%. He wouldn't be the next person on the list. He'd be a few down behind Ray Emanator and some others that aren't here. This is to say, Metis has played for a long time, and I don't want to hold against him times when he wasn't as good as he got around 2011, but also win rate's a meaningful number, and you can see that the Jaws, the Piggymans, the Chickanees do have substantially higher win rates. Uh, when I was starting, it was widely thought, I think, that the three best non-winners were basically of active players, because Mafiosi was not so active at that point. Um, were basically, again, I might disagree with this, but we're basically geez, why am I forgetting one of them? Oh, Jadat, because his 2006 run was insane. Jadat, another long term player that lowers his win percentage a lot. He's around 51, 52. Jadat, Kazik with his two finals, and Grat. Just unbelievable win rate. If you ever look at Grat's account, it has like 21,000 wins and like 250 losses or something. It's the most insane account in the history of the site. And he was a very, very good tournament player as well, who never quite broke through. All right, achievement. So this is you get 1,000 points for each win. Of course, this list is players that don't have a win. 500 for a finals, 250 for a semis, and 125 for a quarters. We see my big three on top. You might start looking at these lists and think Jaws is maybe the fourth best non-winner. There's a whole bunch of these lists if you like scroll back through the video where Jaws places really, really high, very high win rate. We'll see good results versus good competitors. Like maybe Jaws should be in that conversation. I think he wasn't much liked and wasn't in any of the big clans, but I could be wrong on that part. Um, but Jaws has a case for being up there. Also, great showing by the Patriot, and always nice to see Doom Train, as I said earlier. Yeah, Amo really did great in the early 2010s. He's much better known as just being a fantastic clan leader, but also became a really great player. Became a really great closed player, and was known for that earlier. Became a great closed player and a great clan leader, and was known for those things. And then sneakily started dominating open tournaments as well. Activity wins. This is the all-time most important list. We can all agree on this. I personally am on 7. I hope someday to be able to contest Sir Smoke's throne. But these are the top non-winners for most activity wins. Wins versus winners. Now here, we again see that same top 4. Chickeny, Jaws, Piggyman, and Metis. And this is to say that even though Jaws didn't play that long, he consistently only lost to good players and beat a lot of good players as well. But Chickeny's lead here is pretty extraordinary. Basically, if he hadn't been beating Yojimbo in every finals, he could look pretty different on our all-time lists. Fun to see Amo look so good here. Kazik, Reanimator, Doom Train, Foyer, as I said, beats a lot of top people. Grat is great. Yevon is great. Yevon can beat anyone. Cool Spot, Mafiosi. Yeah, names we expect. I don't know if we've seen Fusion Cloud yet. Very solid performances. Didn't play a ton, spread out a bunch over years, but really solid run of tournaments every time he did play. But yeah, don't you look at these lists and think there's a clear top 4? Chickeny, Piggyman, Metis, Jaws, probably in that order, or probably the 4 best non-winners. Okay, we'll see if that holds up. Win rate versus winners. We have Pogi topping the list. I assume this meant he went 2 for 3. We have Keith Atkinson and Weiris going 3 for 5. And then we have Jaws and Chickeny. Once again, you'll notice Piggyman also with a quite nice score. I think a lot of the 50%ers are basically 1 for 2, though certainly Dream Virus, Kefka have played more than 2 games against winners, and Stuff at this point must have as well. So, yeah, probably more impressive by Dream Virus, Kefka, and Stuff than by, say, Cloudstrike. Though nice for all of them. And yeah, you'll notice all our big 4 are here. You might say they're not at the top, but the important thing is they're here. A lot of this is going to be small samples, and so the difference of like 16% between Metis and Jaws is the difference of 1 or 2 wins. It's really not all that meaningful. It is to Jaws' credit that he's narrowly top here over Chickeny, but the gaps shouldn't mean that much to us. The important part is all these players have shown they can get close to 50% win rates against the very best in the game. And I think that's the real strong indication here. And so credit to Jaws and Chickeny. but these are actually pretty good numbers for literally everyone listed. Even the people, like, obviously, anyone making these top 10 or top 15 lists, anyone making it, these are really good numbers. Like, these are really impressive results. But if you're fighting for the top spots, if you're arguing this person should be top two and they're in eighth somewhere, that normally hurts their case a little. Here, I don't think it does so much. Okay, win rate versus non-winners. Oh my God, Saber. There are a couple stats. Saber, I think, has a really high icon rate. I think showed up at maybe 50% there. Didn't play that much, but never lost to anyone who wasn't a winner. I don't think Saber played that many casual games either. So I just don't have any sense of how good Saber was. But there's someone that pops out as a really interesting what if from these numbers. And if you did play Saber and you did think they were really good, you could very reasonably think here was a player who had a chance to be really notable in the community and didn't play enough to get there. But if you did play Saber and you thought not that good, you'd probably think small sample theater. Again, I've talked too much about small sample theater. Okay. Nice results also for Ulti. Ulti always impresses here. Soaps, Ace, and Bryce. Why did I typo Bryce there? I don't know. Lionheart again. Focus and Fury, really nice showings against non winners. Two players that didn't play that long, but in what they did play, they did well, and they especially were able to beat weaker players really consistently. Um, you'll notice of our top four, Piggyman is the only one who makes this section. Um, Piggyman is a higher win rate versus non-winners and a comparable win rate versus winners, but a higher win rate versus non-winners than any of Chickeny, Metis, or Jaws. And I guess this video has become about Piggy. It was originally supposed to be about shouting out some players I don't shout out enough, but it has now become about this battle of the four. I mean, it's got to be Chickeny, right? But okay, I think there's a four. I think there's a foursome. And I know people are high on Jadat and Kazik, and my numbers tend to underrate Jadat. He's very, very good. Some people are high on Grat, as I said. If you're early on, probably Mafi Josie jumps out to you. If you're a bit later, you're probably just on the Piggyman or Chickeny train. Yeah. Anyone who comes around basically from when I did onwards, like late 2008 onwards, I think you're going to be on Piggyman, Chickeny, Metis. If you show up around 2007 8, maybe you could be on Jaws. But I think more people at the time were on Kazik or Jadat or Grat. And before that, Mafi Josie. I think that's the conversation for greatest non-winner. Okay, wins in a calendar year. We have Rayaminator with his fantastic Garland run. I was really surprised to see Gafgarian show up second here. Jadat makes sense. And in fact, if you took not the calendar year, but just a 12-month period, you could make Jadat look. Jadat's one of the most hurt players by me doing January to December years rather than just like a yearly stretch. But I don't have exactly when the tournaments happen, so I can't really do that so well. But the point is, great run by Jadat, great run by Gafgarian. We see Chickeny as the top scorer of our big four, but we see Piggyman very close behind and Metis very close behind that, with Jaws probably on seven. Icons in a calendar year. Again, we see Chickeny on top. We see Piggyman, Rayaminator, and Mafi Josie in the next group. We do see Jaws and Metis coming in the group after that. And a lot of other names we've seen. I think we haven't seen Roseman yet or Shadwell. I'm sure we've seen Sephiroth. Really good short-term player in around late 2008, early 2009. I think everyone else here has gotten mention. Aurora. Yeah. Nice to see Homer again. All right, consecutive icons. Chickeny is the leader, but DJ is tied for first with his fairly recent runs. Very consistent performer, basically only loses to top players these days. Really, really impressive. Now, the thing is, the fields are small and there's a lot of top players left. So that doesn't necessarily get you that deep, but DJ has been consistently grabbing icons despite that. And he also keeps getting good positions against the winners. And I've seen him do good and tough late game calculations. It's just never happened at the same time. Like he has gotten really good positions against the top players and then not succeeded at winning and eventually lost the matchup. But he's made it very clear he could have won that match. I've been very impressed by DJ. We get Doom Train here, which is great to see. Dream Virus, Grat Jaws, Piggy Man again. Piggy Man narrowly trailing Jadat, and then yeah, I feel like I'm just repeating myself. Metis, no, yes, Jaws here in that second group as well for 3 consecutive icons. So our big four remain similar, and people like Mafi Josie are close to the conversation, but I don't think quite in it. Wins to start a career. Well, here we see Mafi Josie looking great. Also fun to see Nimloth looking great. I wish Lionheart and Nimloth had played more tournaments. We should bully them on Discord. If there's one takeaway from this video, it's bully people on Discord. I also wish we could get Ulti back. It would be great to see what she could do. I know it's 20 years later, but would be great. Black Bull. Dorf. Really nice start for Dorf. Very consistently, like, just over 50% player for a long time, which is very hard to do. Nice to see FRM and Clock. Those are 2 players, and Shadow 12 and Thee. A bunch of very solid players from basically when I was starting out that didn't play that many tournaments, and I don't think would have been like in the great tournament players conversation, but were just good players. Consecutive round twos. I did these lazily. I didn't update from my prior thing, so I don't have the full top 10 or 15. I just used people I had already seen were at the top of the leaderboard and didn't go find other people further down. Another really impressive run for Chickeny. And also Dream Virus and Gambit X. Consecutive round threes. As I said, consecutive round threes are so hard to do that to get 4 consecutive round threes in a row, only 6 non-winners have ever done so. My guess is Chickeny has done so multiple times, possibly Piggyman as well. The others I do not think have. But this is a actually very elite group. Being able to go 2-1 repeatedly in tournaments is just very rare. And I think in some ways, especially now that icons can be earned with 1-1s, every 2-1 that someone can put up is just like that's fantastic. That's where I really go. Good work. Consecutive round fours, Chickeny's 5 is an insane achievement, way ahead of the field. We do see Piggyman and Jaws show up here, as well as Metis. Yep, we see all our group showing up here. Any fun names? Vialva. We haven't seen Vialva in a bit, but Vialva had a really nice run right at the end before Rebirth. Shadwell, Sphere, Yevon. Good names to see. Okay. Consecutive round fives. Only 6 people have ever done it who aren't winners. And we see Piggyman here. We see Bryce, Aurora, Grat, Homer, and Ulti. Bryce and Ulti didn't play much, did really well. Aurora briefly showed up, and I never got the interview. I sent the questions, and they started responding, but it never continued. That's a shame. Aurora is one of the players early on that I'm quite interested in. All right, highest world ELO rank. So this is my ELO ratings. What was your peak rating among active players? So I will say, like in 2004, there are a ton of active players, but there haven't been many tournaments yet. So if you happen to have a good tournament within the first 3 tournaments, you're going to place very high. Well, something like in 2009, you know, basically every all-time top 10 player in the world except Doc Evil is active. In 2009, to make the top 10, you have to be ahead of at least one of Delial, Seto, myself, Yojimbo, Nightwish, MC, Great Sephiroth, Turds, Slash of Time, Kamikaze, Kana. It's just insane. So it's so hard in some periods to make top 10 and much more plausible in others. Like 2014-15, there are a bunch of names that appear here, and in part that's because the field was less active with the top players. Anyway, Chickeny super impressive, Ulti impressive, but you'll notice those are at the start and end. So Gratz 2007 really jumps out to me here. Obviously, there's a clear argument that the other numbers ahead of it are better, but that really jumps out at me. Also, Jaws in both 07 and 08 strikes me as really impressive. Piggyman in 11 and 13, hitting number 9 twice. So, different things may pop out at you. Those are the ones that pop out really at me. Kazik 2009. I think it's just harder to be top 10 from 2000, say, 8 to 11 than any other period. And you'll notice there are exactly 5 players here who qualified in that period. and I think there's more basically in every other period. Um, so, anyways, that's what I think. But some great showings by lots of people here. Nice to see Addy. I don't think we've seen Addy before. Steve 3 came so close to making so many of these lists and just missed. And I was kept thinking, should I like juice the numbers and fake them to get Steve on the list because he's been so close so many times. And Addy was another one that's was borderline quite a lot. Selder, that's a fun one to see. We see DJ again. We see Focus again. All right, let's move on. Peak years. This is from my years thing of the past video of best performance in a single year. So it gives the rating of the performance, the player, the year they did it, and the number of games they played that year. So I tend to have more faith, as is very obvious from this video, the bigger the sample. So Jadat's 2006, Kefka's 2005, Mafi Josie's 2004, I think are really impressive. Chickeny leading the list is really impressive. You'll notice Chickeny, Piggyman, and Metis are all here, but Jaws is not. Jaws doesn't quite have that standout year with a lot of games played in the ways the others do. So maybe I should be saying Mafi Josie is fourth for greatest player to never win. Or maybe it's Kazik. Kazik looks really good here. Focus is a fascinating what if, really impressive. Maybe it's Shadat, that said. And the other thing I wanted to note here was look at how many times Piggyman shows up. Piggyman in 2022, Piggyman in 2009, and Piggyman in 2011 all make the list, and 2 of them are top 4 finishes. Chickeny is wonderful in the 2013-14 period. But one of the cases for Piggyman would be, even though he's the Seto-like player who jumps in and out, every time he jumps in, he's so goddamn good. Okay, do we have anything else today? Peak Elo. So here we see Chickeny and Piggyman as the top 2, with a pretty clear gap between them in the field. Why does this list not include Metis? How did I miss Metis? Okay, one sec. I'm gonna go find Metis's ranking. Apologies. That's a huge omission. I guess this is fun. We can place bets. I would bet his peak. I think he's right around where Kazik is. Maybe a touch ahead of Kazik. I bet he's third, but he could also be a little lower. But I bet he's third. I think there is a big 3. Great showing by Kefka. Great showing by Grat. Ulti in her short time did so good. There's a whole pile of players at 2160. If there's anyone you're like, they should have made it, like Jadat or something. They're all 2160 something and just missed. There's so many players that are great players that peaked at 2160. Anyhow, we are looking at Metis. The page is loading. Now I have to find the part that says it. Okay. Peak Elo. Metis. 2255. Clear third. Okay. Huge apologies for that. What a mess up from me. But that's nice. It's nice to see Chickeny, Piggyman, and Metis. I will say, like, Chickeny should just have a tournament win. It's just a kind of ridiculous fluke of fate that Chickeny does not. Piggyman and Metis could incredibly easily have a tournament win. They would very much fit in within the winners. But Chickeny fits in with the people who you're like, oh, obviously they have a win. While Piggyman and Metis would fit in with like, yeah, they should have a win. And that should be the best of the non-winners. It would be very weird if history had turned out that like everyone who won is an obvious winner and everyone who didn't win obviously could never have won. That's not really how competition works. So anyway, yeah, I think that's all I got. Sorry I got so focused on the top 3 or 4 of non-winners. I think it's number 1, Chickeny, number 2, Piggyman, number 3, Metis. Pretty clear gaps between them. I think, like, it's very hard at this point to argue Piggyman over Chickeny, and I think it's very hard, or quite hard, to argue Metis over Piggyman, despite him having 4 finals to Piggyman's 1. which is where you'd have to start the conversation. But I think Piggy Man has been the better player a substantial period of time. And then there's a question for who's fourth. My inclination looking at these numbers has been Jaws, but if you said Kazik or Kefka or Grat or Ulti or Jadat or Mafi Josie, these names all make sense to me. Yeah, I'm really curious if anyone has opinions. Who do you think the five best players to never win are? I suspect the like conventional answers are going to be Nimloth, Lionheart, Ace, Black Bolt, and who's someone else with like that kind of mystique, and say Chickening, something like that. And that might be true, but if we're tournament focused, that probably shouldn't be our list. Uh, and so I'm gonna say my top five are Chickeny, and this is like not entirely numbers based, but Chickeny, Piggy Man, Metis, Jaws. I'm gonna go Mafi Josie. Yeah, Kazak's really tempting. Kazak's right there looking at me, but I think that's the top five I'd go with. All right, we'll call that a video.